Hey, what's up? Dave with Brazos Valley Strength. Today I'm going to make a video that I normally make just for my private client group. I'm going to talk a little bit, maybe a little bit more about a recap for my nationals than I did in my last video. I think after the competition I didn't really have a lot of thoughts. I'll recap it a little bit more because I think it'll lead into the rest of the topic in the video. But really the stuff after my recap is the video that I've made most years following big meets, specifically nationals, just as, kind of thoughts, afterthoughts, reflections after nationals, and just kind of the things that I take away for myself as an athlete and then myself as a coach, looking at the people that I coach and how to get more out of those lifters, how to get more out of myself. So this video for sure is going to be a lot more unrehearsed. I kind of have in my head, I guess, the feelings that I want to say, but I haven't rehearsed too much of what I'm going to say. A lot of times these videos are a little bit more critical. I'm still going to try to keep most of that stuff in here, without naming any names or things like that. And I mean, it's not like I'm talking, too much shit on people, but just the thoughts in general about what we can take from lifters who consistently do very well, or some lifters who do consistently, not so well at these competitions, and really, just looking for things to give people the opportunity to be the best that they can be and perform on these stages as well as they want to, or even perform there at all. So by the way, hopefully I get through this video uninterrupted without too many cuts or anything. Coming back from Vegas last week, I got a pretty hardcore case of COVID, so recovering from that still here too. So if I sound weird or end up coughing and things like that, I'll try to cut that out. But we'll hopefully make it through this video as cleanly as we can. So anyway, as far as my performance, this block heading in was one of the smoothest blocks that I've ever done heading into a competition. And the reason I really want to talk about the block, my performance, is that I have overcome so much negativity, like self-imposed negativity as a newer lifter, and gotten to a place to where my maturity as a lifter is showing up on the platform and, representing in really good competitions. And I think that this block was a really good representation of that. I think, like most people, I deal with little nagging injuries kind of year round, right? My knees here and there can get upset, sometimes randomly, but there's things that are strategies that I can use to mitigate it, or things that I know that I can't push too hard in order to not set them off, or pec injuries and those kind of things. And I think that for sure I've gotten better at keeping those things in check, but it's a maturity throughout training blocks and heading into competitions that I'm so much better with these days than I was even just a couple of years ago. And that I know the best way for me to be strong on the platform is not have just an amazing competition block, just put together the best thing I possibly can and be the absolute strongest on all my lifts and push all my sessions incredibly hard, but it's to make sure that I'm healthy and that I have good productive training the entire block, more so than the best training possible, and put together something that will give me a reliable performance. And I even kind of push back at times when lifters, I mean, it's a common term, but calling it a peaking block. And like, oh man, when I go into my peaking block, I'm gonna be, pushing stuff so hard. And I personally don't use those words, right? Like, I call it competition block. I'm not looking to just peak super hard, to do stuff really, really hard outside of what I normally would. I talked about this in like how to write a peaking block. I mean, essentially that video was, you do what you think will always work well for you. You just like bring in all the best stuff and you write a good block. And so I think that mentality, we see more and more with many of the best lifters, right? Is that they're just trying to get their best stuff on the platform, stuff a lot of times that they potentially have hit other times, and not that they're just looking to transform into a different person. And I mean, that happens year round. I'll come back to that later, try to make my recap a little bit shorter. But in this block, I did a great job with that. And I've done a good job, over time getting better and better. But I just think that process is the best it's ever been for me right now, making good decisions and putting together good blocks rather than the best blocks. So luckily, this one I was pretty much able to stay pain-free the whole time. Upper body and lower body for the most part. I actually started with a little bit of discomfort for sure in my elbow, a little bit in my pecs, but it got better as the block went, like just good decision making. So squatting specifically, I squatted super well in training. Squatted over 700 pounds at least 3 weeks that I can remember, which I don't know that I've ever squatted over 700 pounds more than once in a block, or more than, a couple weeks, 1 week in a block. So hitting it over three times in a block heading in, I was super, super confident that I was going to PR my squat, and I didn't. I squatted 325 kilos, which matched my PR. It was 5 kilos, competition PR. It was 5 kilos under my best squat from the block heading in, 5 kilos under what I kind of wanted to squat. So, 10 kilos under what I wanted to squat. There were things that happened in the moment. Like I felt, and Ashton Ruska mentioned, there were a few people who mentioned that we felt like the bar, and I'll say bar, for whatever reason, the whip of the bar felt more exaggerated than we would have expected. Picking up 300 kilos in the gym, picking up 330 kilos in the gym, I have never really felt like I've lacked control because of the whip of the bar. Angelo Fortino on the Two White Lights podcast mentioned that his feeling was that it was the collars, and that if there's unrack, those collars just get a little looser, and then it almost like exaggerates itself, right? So now there's a little bit of vibration and it's increasing, and those collars can get looser and just kind of everything loosens up. And sure, that makes sense to me. But ultimately, the reason I bring that up is that it doesn't matter, right? That everyone was dealing with the same thing. And my decisions in the moment, like I felt super strong, but I picked up 305 as my opener. I thought like that felt weird. and so I was like, I feel strong, but yeah, it wasn't as fast as it could have been. So let's take a conservative jump. And then that one definitely felt whippy to me. It's like, look, we just have to make lifts. That's the road to the big total, despite how I feel. And that I think is, an area of maturity that I've done, way better with. That heading into this competition, I was more prepared to squat the biggest ever than I ever have been. And I essentially matched, a performance for the last 2 competitions, so it almost looks like I've made no progress in my squat over a year. And I was pumped with it, right? Like that I'm able to now hit these, reliably hit the 700 plus 320, 325 range. Even with something that I don't feel is like feeling right, and on the biggest platform, just, being able to repeat that over and over. And my training was great, right? So, okay. But I took what was there on the day to give myself a shot at, the bigger stuff. And I think that people, I guess maybe like, spoilers here, focus way too much on the success of the day being PRs and everything, and not just the aspect of competing, and that going out there and the other people are fighting against you in similar ways, right? Like they're having to deal with the potential bar whip or whatever, and they're having to deal with the pace of the meet and the crowd environment, all those things, right? We're all dealing with those things. And the way that I end up being a better power lifter with a bigger total at the end of the day is to make more lifts. And the way that I PR at competitions is by doing better in the gym and training. It's not by me going to the competition and, having the best meet of my life or just like sending it because like, well, I'm here. I only get this opportunity twice a year. I can take advantage of those opportunities by doing better in the gym all the time, right? And I've done a great job with that, right? So like I have opportunities now, like next time I should be able to get a little bit more, but the process is just extended, and it just doesn't need to be so like, small scale that we have to PR this time. It's just like we got to get good at competing, and I'll come back to more on that later. But anyway, like the squat I think is the main example of that, to where it was, I never felt disappointed about it. I felt really good about my squat in that moment. I was like, I'm getting stronger, absolutely, right? And like, I don't like the way this feels right now. Take what's there, do what you can, right? Okay, 3 for 3 on squats, we're doing well. I didn't lose any kilos here. We're in good shape. So just briefly on bench press, since we're doing a recap, I benched 200 kilos, great. It's been something that I've been going after for a long time. It was a little bit difficult. It was pretty difficult. It was one that I guess wished would have been a little bit easier. But again, like exactly what I said on the last one, I've been having really, really good training. In this case, my bench press training wasn't as good as it could have been heading into the competition, but I've gotten significantly stronger overall, and I keep on cruising past it. So that was certainly a nice milestone to hit, and continuing to chip away there as much as I can. So obviously on the deadlifts, the main story there, again, just another really good performance from me at a competition, feeling significantly stronger on the competition day than I do in training, and just going to continue to trust that my training numbers correlate, right? Like I was 5-10 kilos stronger during this block than I was in, previous blocks heading in, and I pulled that way, right? The numbers were different. The numbers actually in training, I just have to add 30 kilos or whatever to what I hit in training to what I could potentially hit in competition, which is unique. I don't know that that's something that everyone should trust all the time, but if you do see those things, then you can trust those things, and it should help you with your training decisions. And again, like that just kind of applies everywhere, is that I think it would be easy to be frustrated. It's like, man, I'm so close to pulling 400 kilos. I nearly did it in this competition. Why can't I pull, over 800 like ever in training? But it's like, but it doesn't matter, right? Like the training is training. And if my training is getting me better for competing, then so be it. Then I just need to continue to make good choices in training and continue to improve. And that allows me to have those good performances at the competition. So, I think that's just one of the biggest ideas overall, is to be able to look at those things and identify like, well, when I'm fresh, I know I do this better, or like, is what I'm doing right now. Maybe I guess a better way to say it is the idea of trusting the process. I think that sometimes that gets thrown around a little bit more often than it should. It's certainly a good sentiment that we want to be able to trust in, there we go, excuse me. We want to be able to trust in the concept, buy into what we're doing to be able to get the most out of it. But we need to have a good sense that those things are working, right? But, those things go both ways. If we're not able to buy into it and invest in the process the way that we should be, then it's hard to know, right? But anyway, it's like trust the process, but look for the data, the rationale that there are things that are improving. So anyway, I think that there are people that I coach. I've been talking to a couple people even this week about it, that worry a bit too much about what their numbers are on kind of a week-to-week basis, when we know that when they're fresh, when we allow those opportunities for them to perform better, it shows up, right? So we have to be able to score those things differently. So anyway, I think that that's kind of my recap overall. Proud of myself, proud of my process, looking for bigger and bigger things. 900 kilo total, it has been a goal. Obviously, 7 more kilos would have been 2,000. Easily, if I squat just any better at my next competition, I'm there. And then, make a third deadlift, which, yeah, sure. So next meet, like I said, will be the corrupted strength meet. I would guess in my head, I'm saying like it's a little bit more of a YOLO kind of, fun exhibitionary meet. but I got pretty much everything I could have out of my squat and my bench press, and then kind of YOLO'd my deadlift. So I guess I would say at the Corrupted Strength, you'd be looking for potentially similar stuff overall. You hopefully getting everything I can out of all of those lifts. So anyway, as far as thoughts in, kind of post-competition thoughts overall, I think after this meet, the main thing that I'm walking away thinking about is just that the people that are there, especially in prime time, but I mean, you can take what I'm going to say and kind of apply it all the way down, because the qualifications for nationals are getting high enough. Like they would be primetime totals of whatever, 3 years ago. So anybody that's there deserves to be there. But, my experience that, people that I know in primetime and everything, that's kind of what I'm, I guess, familiar with. The people that are there want to be there, and they want to be there year round. And that is what I think is the biggest difference, and what I really wanted to say to my clients, right? I mean, this video, I guess I'm, especially at this point, talking to my clients, but, directing it at everyone. But the people on the primetime stage are not giving themselves out anywhere. I just reshared a post from Mike Tushir yesterday on my story talking about, like, you don't have a lot of time, or exactly what it, I don't remember exactly how it was phrased. But, essentially saying, like, oh, well, it's okay. I can make up the accessories later. I can do all, I have time. And it's okay. This process is a long process, right? Like, powerlifting takes a long time. It'll be okay if I don't do everything right now. I have 6 months to my competition. The people who are good are not thinking that way. And primetime level all the way down to the people who are, barely qualifying. Like I said, even if you barely qualify for nationals, you deserve to be there. I mean, it's a good total at this point. Those people just are not thinking about ways that they can cut corners. I would say pretty much everyone there is thinking about, what else can I do? What else can I do to put more weight on the bar, to improve on the platform? I mean, nutrition, some of the stuff I've been talking about most recently in my videos is like variations and intent within variations. And like that one is the one that I just have to keep hammering home, that, if you're not going into this every session that you do saying, like, here's my process for the day, here's how I'm going to try to get better, here's how I'm going to execute it, whether it's like literally just working hard on accessories or something like that, or saying like, oh, these pause squats are in here because I know I don't do this well, I'm going to really try to get better at it today, instead of like, I'm going to go through the motions of my pause squats, right? Like, I hope today is a good day. It's just not enough. And yeah, that definitely scales at all levels, right? But, especially if you're somebody who even cares enough to pay for coaching from me, or pay for coaching, in general, obviously you're interested in getting better. And the lack of attention, the lack of effort in those places is like almost borderline offensive to me, that it's like, you have to do these things, right? The coach can provide you opportunities to be able to get better, right? Like, here's your opportunity to get better. Now you have to go do it. And it's shocking to me at times how hard I have to fight people or encourage, like, you have to do these details better to get better. And especially now as powerlifting is growing, you are competing with so many people that you don't know exist right now. And I mean, like I said, these videos will end up turning into just tangents on all levels. But I look at some of the juniors, and I think it's easy to make fun of some of those guys at times. All sorts of yelling and screaming and mean lifts in the gym, but they're trying so hard, that I'm looking at them doing what I think is, silly stuff at times, or hyping themselves up in their captions and everything. But that self-belief and that determination and that effort is something that is making them good. I mean, the sport is better than it ever has been. And I mean, some of these 20-year-olds are doing things that I never was able to do as a 20-year-old, and it's just incredibly impressive. And I mean, for sure, there's a talent pool aspect of it. The talent pool is getting bigger. We have better people. But that just effort, you're not going to be able to overcome that effort that other people are putting in all the time. And I think, this is one of the things that I think a lot of coaches mention all the time, or, kind of ask, top level competitors, what sports did you play? And again, I guess I'm more familiar on the male side, but every top 10 male competitor played sports, right? Absolutely. And I think that sometimes that experience for a lot of people is lacking, to where they just haven't learned to fight for a roster spot, to fight for a starting spot. That, you start off as a freshman in high school, and you see the varsity guys, and you're gonna have to get better than the people around you to take those spots at some point. It's not just gonna be given to you, but you also have younger people that are coming up trying to also take that spot from you. And those experiences of whether school is in session or not, and it's going to be on you. You are going to have to get this done. Here's some opportunities. Here's your 2-a-days in the summer or whatever to get better. The people that are showing up and trying are the people who end up out there on the field. And I think a lot of times the people who haven't played sports have not learned that their efforts on a day-to-day basis impact things down the road, right? Because if you're not doing it, someone else is, and they're going to take your spot, and they're going to drive up the qualification totals, and then you're not going to have a national spot anymore, an Arnold spot anymore. And you're not just competing against your own timeline. Other people are shaping that timeline for you. And so, I think a lot of times my videos in general are a little bit more, conceptual, right? Because that's the stuff that we want to buy into it, and not so much this raw motivation. But absolutely, that's the stuff that makes me good, right? It's that just constant drive applied along with, the concepts and the understanding of them. And I guess at times, if I'm able to flip the switch, right, and turn on this, a little bit of intensity, to drive people, that you have to take control and you have to get better, because you're competing against people that you don't even see, that you haven't even existed in your mind yet. They're coming to take all of it from you, and you just have to do better. So, excuse me. I think beyond that, it's the stuff that I said about myself and making good training decisions all the time. But it's also just that real dedication to putting it together on the platform. And I think people know that, but squatting to depth reliably, I'm pausing their bench presses, holding unracks on the bench press. Just all these little details are things that are setting me apart as a competitor. Making my performances so much more reliable, on top of the fact that I'm getting stronger. And looking back at myself, I put it up before, my competition history and how many missed lifts I used to have. And, I don't know that I've missed a lift in a long time based on strength or execution. My last few deadlift misses were both pulls for wins, or pulls for records that were, so it was situations that I had created a big opportunity for me to do something big. But I don't miss squats anymore. I don't get called on depth. It's things that are saying, for me to be a good power lifter, for me to be a good competitor, to win at this sport, my training that I do year round has to put me in a position that I'm able to go out there on the platform under pressure of, family, people watching, you on YouTube, but there's pressure that people are going to be interested and talk shit, if I don't do well, or hype me up when I do. And those things are real in the moment. And you've put in all this time. If you're somebody who doesn't have a following or whatever, it doesn't matter, right? That pressure is always going to be there, that you've put in this time and you need to do well. Well, how do you do well? You do well in the gym before you ever got there. And so, we see some of these people who kind of consistently have not good meets, that are like kind of notoriously sort of high squatters in training. And then like, oh, dang it, I had another bad competition, and it's just so controllable. It is so controllable to be able to not have that volatility in competition. And, I talked about this some in my sinking versus soft touch bench stuff. I mean, and this is, I'm talking about not calling out people. Sean Noriega has mentioned this. His bench press stuff, I think is one that I mentioned in the video before anything has ever happened, and he had a tough time. And then he's taken ownership of it and has said like, okay, I mean, these are things in competition that I run the risk of, when the margin of error is so small there that my success will just, evaporate. Okay, how do I do better to be able to put that on the platform? Well, I mean, we'll see if he does it. I hope he does. But like that stuff, if people are looking at Sean and being critical, he gets better in two ways, right? He gets better by getting stronger, sure. And then he gets better at being able to put those numbers on the platform. And I think kind of on that note, one of the things that I would encourage anyone to do is compete more often and put themselves in those pressure situations, right? I think in between Sean's last meet and this meet, I think he made, good changes. I think that pretty much everyone would say he was more technical, like just kind of more solid, consistent than he'd ever have been. And then, okay, tough day again. But you have to continue to repeat that process. I went through that process. I bombed out of deadlifts twice in a row, and then followed it with winning a national championship, going to Worlds and everything. And so it's not about having those failures. Just like in sports, you have to be willing to have those failures and then continue to improve from them, and have that experience. Say like, okay, the efforts that I put in here were not enough. And we learn that by showing up and competing. And so I guess maybe as a final thought here, one of the common things, amongst kind of like newer lifters and lifters that I coach are kind of thinking, when, I'll do it when I'm ready for a meet, or I'll do a competition when I feel like I've gotten significantly stronger since my last one. And I'm like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, for one, clearly people get more motivation every time they sign up for a competition, right? People sign up for a competition, they start training harder, training generally goes better, right? But that incentive matters. Outside of that, all of the things that I said here are things you have to learn from doing competitions and putting yourself out there and learning how to have that pressure and deal with the pressure. You may genuinely feel like, I'm squatting to depth, and then you get there and you have a tough time with it. Okay, well, you learn. Like, it literally doesn't matter if you feel like you're squatting to depth. If the judges told you you're not, like, well, then you have to do better and fix it. And so that concept overall is something that I certainly, want to keep driving the athletes that I coach. Like, do more competitions. Put yourself more often in these pressure situations, because like I said, you get PRs on the platform by getting stronger in training, but you get PRs on the platform by getting better at competing and getting better at managing the flow and managing the pressure and making good decisions. And you can't just learn that from competing, once every year or 18 months or whatever. I mean, I would say pretty much everyone should be doing 2 meets a year, maybe an average of like 2.5 or something. As a newer lifter, as you get more experienced, I think 2 is probably plenty. But put yourself in that arena and start treating it more seriously. Start actually treating it like a sport, right? That if you're, kind of just waiting for the right opportunity to be able to go out there and just have the meet that you've always been looking for, you're not going to have the experience from those competitions to be able to do it. And then, like I said, just, the drive that people get from signing up for a competition and continually having a competition on the horizon, makes a humongous difference. So, I think the main takeaways that anybody should have watching this video is, first and foremost, you have to want it, and you have to take ownership of everything, right? The way that you're training every session, the quality of those reps, your nutrition, your sleep. And I mean, obviously these things are out, some of those things, right? Sleep and all that are just outside the control of what people consistently have. Some people's schedules, like mine, are set up significantly better to be able to accomplish it. But I'd also make the argument that like I created this situation by investing in those things in the first place, and it allowed me the opportunity to expand more into it. But absolutely taking ownership and understanding that you are literally competing against other people every single day. If you want to be at nationals, so do thousands of other people, and they're trying to take that spot from you. And they're trying to push those totals up, and then you won't be able to get there. And so if you're somebody who wants to be at nationals right now, you have to start acting like it. And then finally, compete more, right? Is put yourself in those situations to allow yourself to get better and to even learn what you need to do better in training. And then those things become second nature. So anyway, I think that wraps up my thoughts on everything. Next week, hopefully I'll be back to real training. I'm going to be doing a little bit of a hypertrophy, as much of a deviation as there is, a little bit more, hopefully like upper body hypertrophy stuff is what I'm gonna be doing. So I'll come out with a new free program next week for everyone, and then a video on that. And then obviously I have tons of content planned for, all the normal videos that I would normally make, technique, educational stuff. So anyway, hopefully in the future, if you did like this kind of style of video post meet, let me know. Let me know in the comments. Give it a thumbs up. We'll see how this is received. Otherwise, I'll keep just making it for my clients. Maybe I'll get more blunt as we move through future competitions, and we'll see where things go. So if you did like this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you next time.